Highly favored of the Lord, and baby, so are you. So I'm going live, like I said that I was going to tonight. I ain't gonna hold you long. I said that last time, and I was on here 45 minutes. Um, to share some more of my testimony of some of the things that God has brought me through. Um, so come on in here, y'all. Come on, come on in the room. Come on in the room. Jesus is my doctor. He writes all out my scriptures. He gives me all my medicine in my room. Come on in here, y'all. Come on in here. Don't mind me. As y'all get to know me, I am a very goofy individual. But when it comes to my king, my father, and his glory, I'm pretty serious about that. Come on in here, y'all. Let me share. I'm going to share some more, kind of break it up. This is how I'm going to be sharing in things. Right now, I'm sharing the things that I went through with my mother. And then I'll share the things that I went through with my dad. And then I'll share the other things. So come on in here, y'all. Let's share. So the last time I talked to y'all, I shared about, the traumatic situation I went through with my mom and her John, for lack of a better term. Um, it wasn't easy living with my mom. My mom was gone a lot of the time, and to be quite honest, I spent a lot of time with my grandma. My grandma, she was a wonderful person. She loved me, and I felt loved by her. And I think I said this in my last video that I'm thankful to the Lord uh, for allowing my grandmother, for me to hold that place in my grandma's heart, so that I know what it was like to have real love from an individual. And so God allowed me. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Just sharing more of my testimony and how God has the things that God has walked me through. Welcome. Um, so my the Lord allowed me to be loved by my grandma, and that was nice. I held on to that. Hello, hello, hello. Anyway, so another thing that I went through, like I was saying, I spent a lot of time with my grandma. My mom was gone. She was a woman of the night, and that was her thing. I spent a lot of time with aunts and grandma and things like that. But I remember in my eyes, though, there was nothing that my mother can do wrong. As kids, we look up to our parents, and she wasn't abusive to me, like physically. It was the emotional, always leaving me with grandma and things like that. And I needed my mom at that age. But there was times too that I would look at her, and that woman can do no wrong in my eyes. Even though she was a woman of the night, she kept a clean house. She loved me. She made sure I was always clean when I went to school. She would always make sure I was in school, that my hair was done and things like that. And so that part of her love for me caused me to overlook the neglect, if that makes sense. So anyway, but I remember the day um my mom gave me away to my dad. My mom and my dad had never been married. They had two kids together in passing, if you will. But eventually he moved on and he married somebody else. And my stepmom, she hated me. She hated me and she hated my brother because we came from my mom. My dad and my stepmom had two kids together, and their kids was can do no wrong. And my brother and myself, we took a back seat to her children. So anyway, I remember in this part of my life, my dad had took my brother and my mom had kept me. And so my mom allowed me to go and stay the weekend with my dad so that I can see my brother, because I hadn't seen him in so very long. And I went and stayed the weekend with them. And the weekend is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You know, you go back home, you go back to school, you resume life. But I was at my dad and my stepmom's house for a very, very, very long time. I remember that, and it seemed that way as a child. And while I was at my dad's house, my stepmom, she would do unimaginable things to us to show us that she was the woman of the household and that her children, we were subject to her children. She just would show us physical and emotional and verbal abuse, just because she could. My dad was working all the time, so we would really be left in her care while dad was at work, and she would just be mean to us. And when I finally got to go back home to my mom, I remember my dad, we were all in his car, and I think he had like a Nova, if I'm remembering this right. It was old. And we pulled up in front of my mom's apartment building, and I remember just feeling so excited. And I get out of the car, and I remember running into the apartment building and running into her room. And all I wanted to do was just throw my arms around my mother because I had missed her so. And so, and I walked in, I bust through the front door, and which led into our living room, and I didn't see her anywhere in there. So I went around the corner, which kind of led to the kitchen, and I didn't see her anywhere there, the bathroom. And I went into her bedroom, and there she was laying in the bed. And when I walked in her bedroom, I knew the smell that I had smelled, and it was crack. And so I should not have known that smell at that age, but I'm not the only one that does. It's kids all around the world. I mean, some of you might have grown up in that. It's not a sob story. This is a story of forgiveness and redemption. This is a story of God's grace, and so I see her laying in the bed, and she was laying there, and she was high. And I jumped on her on the bed, and I said, "Mom, I'm home. I miss you so much." And, she just looked at me with that real high look in her face. And she said to me, "Baby, mama's sick. And I can't take care of you no more," and I'm like, "Mom, what are you talking about?" And I just loved her. "I'm home, Mom. Now everything is going to be okay," and all of the things that she was really trying to tell me in her strong way that, she was choosing drugs over her mom. And it's not, I don't want to make an excuse for her choosing her addiction, but addiction is no joke. And it had a hold of her real tough. And so she said, "I can't take care of you no more, you're going to have to go live with your dad." And after what I had just experienced at my dad's house with my stepmom, I didn't want to go back there. I was so glad to get out of that car because my stepmom and my stepbrother and sister was in the car with my real brother, and my dad and we were all in the car together. So happy to get out of that car. All I wanted to do was take my brother with me and for us never to go back to that horrible place. But the reality of it was, this is where I was at. And so, and she repeated it to me again. I can't take care of you. And so she said, "Let me talk to your dad." And I remember going from her bedroom, which led through the kitchen / bathroom into the living room. And I went into the living room to sit on the couch. And I remember just hearing yelling and screaming and profanity and just arguing, and dad comes out of the room, and he comes into the living room with just fury in his eyes. And he says, "Come on." And I didn't even get to say bye to my mom, and we went to the car. And as soon as we got to the car, I can see my stepmom's face as we were approaching the car. And she had a very angry look in her face. And my dad opened the door, and I got in the car, and he opened the driver door, and he got in the car. And she said, "What is this bitch doing in my car?" And that's what I had to go home with and live with for several years. My brother and I just dealt with a lot of abuse. And now that I lived with her, she just really let the floodgates open. I remember Several days after I went and lived with them, after it was just settled that I was going to be living there, she was not nice about it. She called me everything in the book. And mind y'all, I'm like 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8, if my memory is serving me right. But I'm gonna say maybe 7, 8, because this came right off the whole situation with my mom's John. So anyway, excuse my wig. I've been out running errands and it looks rough. Anyhow, and she just let the floodgates open. I remember one particular day she took me into the bathroom. And now, mind you, I told you all my mom took care of me. So my hair was always done. I was always clean. I always went to school. In that regard, she took care of me. And my stepmom took me into the bathroom and she stood me in front of the mirror and she took out of the medicine cabinet a pair of long, sharp scissors. Those old school Michael Myers looking scissors. Yeah, and I truly thought that she was going to stab me and kill me in the bathroom, because that's the type of abuse we had been subject to. My brother, since he moved in with my dad, which was a couple of years before I got there, and me for only like a week. And she took my ponytail out from the side of my head like this, and she took those scissors and she put them right on the scalp side of the rubber band, and she cut them. They were still the same ponytails my mom had sent me in. And she looked me in the face and she goes, "Nobody's going to be prettier than my daughter." And she cut my ponytails down to the scalp. And she took me by the back of my collar and she took me into the dining room and she threw me in the corner and she said, "Stand there in the corner." I was in that corner almost the rest of the night for no reason, just because now I was a burden on her. So that's the type of things that I was subject to living with my dad and my stepmom. They eventually end up getting a divorce, or I wouldn't say a divorce, but they separated. And of course, my dad blamed us for it, and there was a lot of physical abuse there when he was around, because now, he was not only an alcoholic, but he was a crack addict himself. And so, the first of the month would come around, and he would have food stamps and all of the things that you get from state. And my brother and I, who, by the way, my brother's only 11 months older than me. We're not even a whole year apart. And we were kids then. We wouldn't see dad for the first week of the month, maybe a week and a half, until all the money ran out, the food stamps, until he sold all the food stamps or he ran out all the money. And out there doing drugs, selling it for drug money, alcohol money, doing whatever he was doing. Literally, my brother and I was left in our apartment alone. And so, and we would fend for ourselves. Sometimes we would have to go knock on neighbors' doors to say, can we have a glass of milk? Can we have some food? That was the easiest way to get food. So then after one of the neighbors in the building told on us and said, your kids are asking for food. That didn't turn out well. That turned into a bunch of abuse, so much abuse that, we couldn't go to school for the next few days because we had woke up in the next morning and there was bloody sheets stuck to our body. And then so we would go to school and we would, take a change of clothes with us to try to trick the lunch ladies and go through the line again to get more food, and the extra food that we would when we were able to get, we would put in our backpacks so that we would have something to eat later on that night when we got home from school, especially if it was a Friday and that weekend was coming and we didn't know where dad was going to be. Well, when the lunch ladies finally caught on to that, we couldn't do that anymore. So we would just wait until the lunchroom was empty, and then we would dig through the trash cans, and whatever wasn't soaked with milk, we would put in our backpack, for food, because that's how real the situation was in our life. But my mom, later in years, after I left living with my mom and I started living with my dad, I didn't see my mom She would pop in and out of my life every so now and again to check on me. You know, she was still addicted to drugs, still doing her lifestyle, but every so many years she would pop out of the woodwork to let me know that her presence was known. When she left, when I left her, let me go back. When I left her, she said to me, "Baby, when mama gets better, I will come and get you." Do you know that those words held me through the abuse that I suffered from my stepmom and my dad for years? I just knew I can get through it because one day my mom was coming to get me. One day my mom was coming to get me. And I held on to those words like white on rice, let me tell you. She never came. She never came. I suffered so much abuse, not now through my dad, but his family. They didn't care for me because they didn't care for my mom. And so because I looked like my mom, they treated me like they would have treated her, if that makes sense. And then by different family members in my dad's side of the family, I started to suffer sexual abuse. And when I was 13 years old, I got pregnant with my first child. And that was hard. That was very hard. That was very, very hard to deal with. I'll talk more about that in the next life, but I want to finish what God did with me and my mom. I didn't see her. You know, like I said, every so often I would see her. But later in life, she contacted me and she was dying. She was dying of cancer. I'm talking 25, almost 30 years have passed since I left her house. And I would see her probably a handful of times throughout those years. At the end of her life, she called me. She found me. She had a way of finding me no matter what. I don't know how she did it. She could have been the best FBI agent, but she did. And she told me she was dying. You know, she said she was sick with cancer. And my son right now, his father, we were together. We went and got her. And I took care of her the last bit of her life, and she died in my arms. But in those moments, God did the little bit of time that I had with her. God gave me back my mother. She said she would come for me. She never came, but God brought her. And in that time, that little bit of time that I had with her, and I think it was like 6 weeks I had with her before she died, there was a lot of confessing of sin. God did some healing in that situation. And I was able to lead her to the Lord. So I may not have had the childhood that I wanted with my mom, but I thank the Lord for what he gave me. And I thank the Lord for having an opportunity for forgiveness to be had, for reconciliation, if that makes sense. And I'm thankful that she was able to come to know the Lord as her personal Lord and Savior. So I will see her again. I'm thankful to the Lord for that. God can bring healing. It doesn't matter what type of situation you've been through. And I know some people have been through worse situations than that. I am not downgrading anybody's situation. People have been through horrible, horrendous things. But through Jesus Christ alone, there can be healing. You may not get answers to why you had to endure all the things you had to endure, but we just have to trust the Lord and cry out to God. I'm still in the place, where I'm asking God to heal my inner little girl so that I can move on in life in certain areas. But even in that, I may not understand why I've had to endure all the things. That's okay. God's ways are perfect. His will, he's perfect. And I just have to trust that he has a plan for his glory. I may have went through all of the things that I've went through just to share with whoever may be seeing this video and saying, there is hope in Jesus Christ. Um, through all the sexual abuse that I had been through growing up, I thought that my only purpose in life was to be sexually pleasing to a man. And up until I was 42, I believed that. Because that was the only way I can get attention from a man. Because of the lack of a right relationship with my dad, I thought that this was normal for years. For years. And until Jesus showed up. Until Jesus showed up. And showed me what love was like. I have been single for 4.5 years, just focusing on my relationship with Jesus and healing from all of that. So that should God bring somebody in my life, I won't bleed all over somebody that did not cut me. That I won't be bringing baggage. That whoever this man of God is, I can serve the kingdom of God with him as a family from a place of healing and being made whole through Jesus Christ. Healing is not an easy journey, let me tell you, but it's worth it. Because I said, Lord, I would look at people like, Lord, what is that like to be free? You know, when we see people from an outside perspective, we have no idea what they're dealing with. You know, we only see what we see. And that's why the word of God tells us don't judge what we see like that, you know. Don't be jealous of what we see people going through, you know. Anyway, healing is possible, and I used to wonder what it was like to be free in certain areas, and God has slowly shown me in the last 4.5 years in some areas what that's like. Well, there's work yet to be done, but he's done enough in these 4.5 years that he don't do no more. I'm grateful for what he's done. What he's done has let me know real love exists. What he's done lets me know that I don't have to be held in bondage and captive to the things that the enemy has set up in my life to keep me in bondage and to keep me held captive. That I can be free through Jesus Christ, and that is my encouragement to you. And I know I've done a lot of talking, and maybe some of it don't make sense. Like I said, I'm new to all this, and I'm just trying to tell you what I've been through. The whole point of it is, whatever it is that you have been through, there is healing and being made whole only through Jesus Christ. If you ask, if you want it, if you can cry out to the Lord, humble yourself, cry out to Jesus. Let Jesus know, I can't do this. I am sick of being this way. I don't want to carry this around no more. I know it is you that can heal me. Can you please do it? Cry out to the Lord and he will heal you. That's my encouragement to you guys. I love you. Have a good night. You are distracting.